Join us for our interview with Don Jones, an exceptional entrepreneur whose company Experiential is pushing the limits of learning through the creation of immersive, interactive, and engaging simulations that raise the bar in leadership development for companies around the world. Keep watching. You may just learn something.
So I thought I'll start my own business and just see if I take a shot at it. And if I don't succeed, what do I have to lose? At the time, I was living in a pretty cheap apartment, and I didn't need a lot to survive on. So I thought, give it a shot. And I just wanted to see if I could make a difference in education, and I wanted to see what I could learn.
Okay, let's get into this. In 2020, the Economic Forum published a report titled, "Our Education System is Losing Relevance." What they were getting at is the idea that how we teach hasn't changed much in the last 200 years, and it's holding societies back. So why hasn't the education system adapted to the new world? Well, it could be the result of the 200-year-old model upon which it was built, school funding deficits, overcrowded classrooms, or a lack of support. Plus, the way that humans absorb information and use technology has put the mainly analog practices of today's classrooms out of step with the digital behaviors and brains that have evolved. And if we ignore this reality, it will continue to cause more angst for students and educators and dramatically affect our future prosperity, with the World Economic Forum estimating that in the US alone, 13 million students are likely to drop out of school during the next decade, costing that country $3 trillion. The fact is there is no silver bullet, and the solution isn't as straightforward as we may think. But the good news is that there are people out there who are dedicating their lives to make a change. Our guest today, Don Jones, is one of those people. His respect and compassion for educators goes back to his childhood, when an elementary teacher, through how she animated what she was teaching, created a lesson that lasted his whole life. Later, he'd leave a job in marketing with only $200 in his pocket to take a punt starting his own business, one that empowers teachers with more support and provides better design and education. From having no background experience in education and on the verge of closing his business after only 2 years of operation, Don Jones would go on to create a global business, helping leaders learn and grow through interactive and immersive worlds that are delivered across 4 continents in 22 countries in class and 78 countries digitally, with over 140,000 leaders graduating from Experiential training programs. In our interview, Don will share his experience growing up in a family with 6 siblings, and we found his connection to business, along with how Experiential Inc. works, his gravitation towards helping educators, and their impact on his life, and much more. Let's dive into the interview. Don Jones, the lovely and talented founder and CEO of an amazing company called Experiential. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Creators.
It's a pleasure, Robert. I'm looking forward to it.
So Don, I have always so admired you and so admired your company because of the exceptional boundaries that you've pushed in helping advance the impact of learning within organizations. So why don't we start? Why don't you tell us what Experiential does?
Actually, Robert, why don't we end it right there? I think that's perfect. That's perfect. This is going to be great. This is just the right soundbite for today's world. So I'm just going to take it downhill from here. So
yeah, exactly.
So, thanks, Robert, for inviting me. I wrote a book years ago, and it was published, and I dedicated it to a grade 2 teacher. And the reason I did is because I was a shy kid, and this teacher really helped me kind of realize a little bit about myself. I'm not the type to keep in touch with teachers over the years. My mom had to give her the book when it was published. She broke down and cried. It was her first year teaching. And she made a big difference to me. I'm 64, and I still remember Miss McIsaac. I believe in teachers. I believe in education, and I believe they need better support, and I believe education needs better design. So I was working for Canada's Olympic teams and as a marketing program director, and I decided to leave to start an educational company 33 years ago. I didn't have any experience. Fortunately, I did have a bankroll. I had $200 in my bank, and so I just wanted to make a difference in education. And I wasn't smart enough to think I had a solution, so I just started learning from good people in the field. And our company now is on 4 continents, 78 countries digitally, 40 countries physically in the classroom. And every event, every gig, every year, we're just trying to push the boundaries on what's possible in educational design. So we build very immersive, interactive, engaging environments for learning. And sometimes we do that in a classroom with facilitators and teachers. And sometimes we do that digitally with digital facilitators or virtual facilitators. And sometimes we do it simply digitally without an intermediary of a teacher at all. And so that's kind of where we've ended up over all these years. But really, it just came from and still exists in a space that just says, how do we make learning, including our own learning, better designed?
That is such a motivating point of view. And I think one of the things that I've discovered over the years of working with entrepreneurs is that there's only been a handful that have ever referenced the desire to make a lot of money. And that's not to say that they don't desire to make a lot of money, but it is not the driving purpose of their business. And, it's amazing to once again hear an entrepreneur say, actually, I was dedicated to something greater. I wanted, to make a dent in the world. And I can't think of a more important area of the world to make a dent in than education. So if you could go back to your younger self, did you have a background in business? Did you come from a business family? Like, what made you go from working in marketing with Olympic teams to starting a business in an area that seemingly was unrelated?
Yeah, well, I mean, my father was a waiter. My mom worked in retail. All the kids worked in retail. So I was convinced by the end of 7 kids, by the end of that I didn't want to start a store. That's very difficult business. And the rewards aren't that great, despite really good people that work in those fields. And so I've always been creative. I always wanted to do something. My 2 brothers and I, we all started individual businesses in very different fields, relatively successfully, all 3 of us. And I just wanted to try something where I wouldn't have any excuses when someone said, no, you can't do that, or I couldn't explain it properly to someone in charge. So I thought I'll start my own business and just see if I take a shot at it. And if I don't succeed, what do I have to lose? At the time, I was living in a pretty cheap apartment, and I didn't need a lot to survive on. So I thought, give it a shot. And I just wanted to see if I could make a difference in education, and I wanted to see what I could learn. And I learned a lot. And I almost closed the business 2 years in. It just wasn't getting any traction, but I was learning a lot. So I felt like I was getting better and better and better. And then just at the end of that 2 years, I got a contract where I thought, okay, maybe if I get this level of contract consistently, I could actually make a living in this field. And then it just started to go from there. So we really I changed the company around that time to go from lecture, which I was doing, and I was learning to do better and better. I was pretty shy to get up in front of a platform at first. And then I got moderately good at that. But then I noticed that when you're at the front of the room and you have a lot to say and you got your shtick down pat, people think you're smarter than you are. And they started to look at me for answers that I really didn't have. And I thought, that's not who I want to pretend to be. I want to be someone that says, you've got answers I can learn from. I've got some answers. Maybe you can learn from them, but let's learn together. And that's when I designed my first game. So instead of a lecturer, I was off on the side facilitating a game where people could learn from each other, but also I could hold a mirror up to their behavior and say, how's it working for you? Is that working? Then help me learn from you. If it's not working, let's learn from each other about how we can improve. So that was the start of it way back then.
You were 33 years ahead of your time because nowadays the term gamification is everywhere. And so can you tell us a little bit about the difference or that transition from standing in front of a lecture hall to creating and using gamification as an educational tool?
Yeah, well, gamification is a funny word. And when you really think about what it is, and I don't call what we do gamification, although, of course, we design simulations and games. There's no question about it. But gamification is applied in many, many ways, and I think it's applied inappropriately in many spaces because gamification has come to signify a rewards-based system, like checking in on different things where you get tags and all this kind of stuff. You get rewarded, like you're in Las Vegas or something with bells and whistles to keep doing certain things. And I think that's exactly opposite of the way I've taken my company, because if your kids are gamified in school, they're learning to respond to stimulus that isn't about their natural curiosity, their natural talent. They're going, I'm collecting badges. That's okay, but that doesn't lead to transformation internally for your kids. It just doesn't. It learns them to play, it teaches them to play a game to get certain rewards, but it isn't helping them understand what are their passions, what are their talents, what direction do they want to go. So I think gamification has come to represent tools for manipulating behavior. And I think that's really unfortunate. So the games we try to design, and I love games. I always have loved games. I was an athlete. I was a chess player. I played all kinds of games, backgammon, you name it. Love poker, terrible player, But so we decided to design sophisticated, immersive worlds that allowed you to make a lot of decisions and to learn about your own behavior. And of course, the games reward you for certain directions, but they're very much more complex than responding to rewards and penalties. And they give you more of a chance to learn about what you uniquely can bring to an experience and what that tells you about yourself. So for instance, we wouldn't go in to teach math or some science courses in a school. There's much better people who do that and use games for it. The kind of things and they're really, really good, and there's some really good stuff out there for that. Not enough, but there is some good stuff. What we're specialized in and what we care deeply about is human behavior. So learn things where you have to learn about yourself to understand the topic, or you have to learn about the psychology and the emotions and the whole person of others to understand it. So would we come in and do an amazing history course? Yeah, we would. Would we do economics? Yes, because it's about human behavior. Do we design leadership simulations? Of course. Sales simulations? Yes. So the things that require, from our perspective, more of a human understanding about behaviors is where we specialize. And those are very different kind of games. And I would never call them gamification tools. I would just call them really immersive, interactive experiences where you can learn about yourself and others.
Now, what's the difference? It's such a fascinating area. On a number of fronts. Like the things that come to mind are, first of all, it's a massive step change to what people are growing up experiencing in terms of how they learn. The other thing is it challenges a lot of the conventions that I'm sure exist within corporations in terms of seeing a different way, a more creative way to do things. That can't have been an easy journey, but I want to talk about that journey in a minute. I'm interested in describing what's the impact, what's the difference between what we're used to in terms of sitting in a classroom versus being immersed. And a follow-up question is, and how do you get people to suspend themselves to actually immerse into the experience?
Yeah, well, let me start with that second question. And it's an art. It's not a science, but it is an art. And for, the way I describe it when new people are joining our team or to clients is that we expect so much from participants. We expect a lot from them. When you're a teacher in a traditional classroom, you're not expecting them to get actively involved all the time. You're lucky if they put their hand up and respond to a question. But we expect participants who have been trained that way in school their whole life to jump in and be actively involved. Sometimes our simulations are 3 hours, but we've designed simulations that have been 4 days for the Chinese government, 24 hours a day, with 2 hours of debriefing a day. Even when they're sleeping, they could get phone calls at night about what's going on in the simulation. They can respond in role or not. It's their business they're running. So we have to design something that the way I talk about it is you have to safely take them by the hand and show that we're not going to embarrass you and that we respect your intelligence. We're creating a safe environment for you, first of all. But then you have to allow them to get the first 3 steps right. They have to have something to do where they don't feel like an idiot. Like I'm not a massive big game player like some of my teams are, that they play all these online games massive and they're really good at them. I'm not huge that way. So I need someone to help me along. And in design, I'm always thinking about people like me who aren't the type to just jump in underwater. You need to take them by the hand, give them 3 things that they know how to do to start. But once they start, they collide with other people doing their 3 things. And they have all these interconnections that all of a sudden explode. And so I'll go to your first point now about people who haven't been trained that way. And in school, they haven't been, but in life, they have. Oh, they know deep down, and deep down, that many, many of your lessons you learned through the school of hard knocks or through the school of great opportunities or great encounters. You've been learning your whole life that may be even more important than the school you've been in. And you've been doing it by being immersed and engaged, and that's a key word, in your life. And so we're not doing much more than validating what people have already experienced in their life, saying that's not trivial. That's not trivial. It's actually hugely important. And like I said, I value schools. I value great teachers. And not all teachers are great, but some are. And they do a great deal of good. And so we're validating that, and we're trying to amplify it a bit in the classroom and kind of condense years of experience into 3 hours or 4 days where they can kind of see how things are interconnected, how small decision can affect things over here, and then learn from other people's point of view about what went on in that same situation in ways you simply don't get the chance to do in real life. So that one learning experience you might have had on October 22nd in 1993, you didn't get a chance to debrief that with the 20 other people who were involved with that same incident and saw it from very different angles. We just don't get the chance to do that. And I love when we get a chance to do that. And my favorite thing, Robert, is when we have a chance for people to go, wow, I didn't know I was that good. And we're not as opposed to giving people feedback that says, hey, here's some behaviors. Maybe you should work on these behaviors. But a lot of times people actually don't recognize their strengths. Like we were earlier talking about your daughter who has some talents, some real talents. And sometimes people take their talents for granted as if, oh, anybody could do that. But the fact is, because you could do it easily, doesn't mean other people can do it at all. And so it's so nice to wake people up sometimes to what they're really, really good at. And, if I can add one more thing to this, Robert, and I know I'm taking a long time with this answer.
No, it's really interesting.
Back when I started the company, I had a vision for this company, and it hasn't changed. And I don't tell it. It's not written on our website. I don't tell it to all our clients. But it was about a cowboy sitting in a room. And this, I didn't sit down and theorize this. It's just a picture that came to mind. He has cowboy boots on. He's got a cowboy hat. He has a half-drunk bottle of beer on a coffee table. He has his boots on this old ratty coffee table. He's sitting on like a frat house couch. And he has curtains drawn in a really thick curtains, like in a cheap motel room with all this, and it's dark, and he's slumped over, and he's bummed out. I don't know what he's bummed out about, but maybe it's his relationship, maybe it's his career, maybe it's life in general, climate change. I don't know what he's bummed out about. Didn't get cast in Brokeback Mountain, and he was the perfect guy for it. Who knows what it was, but he's sitting on his couch, he's bummed out. My job has always been to get him off the couch, go over to the window, open up those curtains and go, oh man, it's a sunny day out like it is right now here in Liverpool, and where the Beatles came from. And when he opens up those curtains, he goes, maybe I can, ... I don't even care what the ... is. Our clients hire us for very specific things. Boeing, GE, Microsoft, Whirlpool, very specific things. So we do those things in the simulated world. But underneath it all is to get everybody, and they're not going to come to me like, I need help to get off the couch, and they shouldn't. But underlying all our designs, Ron says in our company that it has to have hope and joy in it. And it does. That the future of learning has to be about hope and joy, about being curious, about finding your passion, about pursuing that, getting off the couch and go, maybe I can make a contribution in your field, in your way. And that's really why I still love the business after 33 years. It's still what I'm pursuing. It's still what we're trying to get better at.
Amazing. And so what's the impact? Like, what's the difference between what a company might do in a classroom versus, getting people immersed in directly and being hands-on with the content?
It's a really, so our field has a certain measurement standard, and it's called the Level 4 Kirkpatrick model. Okay. And it's not foolproof. It didn't come out of the heavens. It has all kinds of flaws, but it's about as good as we get in this field. And it's sort of 4 levels of assessment. The first level is sort of, how did you like the course? And when we're working for large companies, it's like, how did this impact the business? And for the most part, nobody in the field has really good level 4 statistics. Because you go through a leadership course, did it really make the stock price jump or something? Come on. It's very tough to track that. In 33 years, we only have 2 level 4 assessments, and they cost a huge amount to do, pre and post testing, and they only can apply to very certain criteria. So 3 years ago, and we're always trying to make a bigger difference. And sometimes it's just a leader coming up to us 10 years later saying, my God, I still remember the max. And what a difference that made to me as a leader. Those kinds of things are really important to us. But 3 years ago, I embarked on doing something to build a different kind of platform that would allow us to help people transfer what they learned in a simulation behaviorally, and then transfer it back to their real life and collect some analytics on that. So we're launching that in January after 3 years of design. Through COVID, through it all, we doubled down and just built this thing, and which helps us get more of that information at the back end, have aggregated anonymous analytics that people can look at. So I'm committed to trying to do more and more on that side to help us understand what actually works in education and what is simply getting in the way. So we think we've made great progress in what we're launching, and we won a Fast Company Technology Award for it. So we're getting the feedback from our clients that we want it, and we launch in January.
Well, it sounds amazing, and I wish you the best of luck with the launch. What would you say, if you look back on your entrepreneurial journey, and as I said, the way that I see the narrative of your business is the fact that young idealist, believed that there could be a better way, created a business that was all about challenging the conventions. And they are very, very deep and long-held conventions of delivering, learning, and took a punt, and over the years has created, a business that is an absolute leader in its space. So if you look back at that narrative, what are the big kind of moments, if you could think of 3, say, that you feel made the biggest difference to your success?
Yeah, first was just deciding to leave my job. that's a big step into a dark space, right? I mean, it's a hopeful space, it's an exciting space, but it's also an unknown space. So I remember there was a quote years ago that, and I can't say it off the top of my head completely, but it was by Goethe or Goethe or however you pronounce it. And you know the quote, it was, whatever you dream, you can do, begin it now. What people don't see with that quote is there's often a second part to it. And by the way, Goethe societies, Goethe societies, they haven't really pinned down whether he said this whole thing, and I've tried to trace it. But the second part of it says, because when one commits oneself, then providence moves too. So the way I used to talk about this is that, because I used to use this in some of my early seminars, is that, a kid who doesn't understand how the grocery store doors open when you walk to it could think there's no handle, so I'm not going to walk to it, right? I'm just going to bump into a glass wall. But in life, you really, once you start committing yourself and moving towards things, then providence often does move too, where all kinds of unknown and unpredictable circumstances can jump in your favor. So I used that quote when I didn't really know what was ahead of me, but I thought if I just keep moving. I mean, I remember October 22nd, 1988, when I went to my second bedroom and I had a phone and I had $200 and I had a door. I didn't know who to call and I didn't know where to go, but that's all I had. But I thought I have my time. And so that was step one. Just saying, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give myself a shot. And if it doesn't work out, I'm going to survive. I'm not going to fold up because I'm not successful. I'm going to learn. And I learned a lot. Even if I folded after 2 years, which I just about did, I would have thought, well worth it. I learned a lot about myself. I think I'm better at a few things. And I would have been very disappointed, and then I would have got on with things. I think the second step was realizing that I didn't want to be a guru at the front of the room like I talked about. I did learn to master the platform at a very humble level, right? But I did learn to master the platform. I still do like giving talks. But I didn't want my ideas to be more valued than they should be. I like what Thoreau said about when he gave lectures. He said, if someone makes you a coat, if the coat doesn't fit, it doesn't mean it's a terrible coat. It means it doesn't fit. It might fit someone else. So he gave his best ideas. I'll give my best ideas. I love them. I think about them a lot. They might be helpful for a few people. And if they are helpful, try on the coat, experiment with it, wear it. If they're not helpful, it doesn't mean they're useless ideas. It means it's not a coat that fits you. We're all different. And I respect that. And that's when I realized I didn't want to be a guru on the stage. I wanted other people to feel great about their own passions. I would be successful if I tapped them into something inside themselves that said, maybe I can. Maybe I'm really good at this. Or maybe I could improve this. And the world doesn't have to change for me to be successful. I can just change a couple things right here. And the third area, I guess, was when I started to realize and see some of the creations that we developed, how profoundly they moved people. And I mean, I always hoped that, they would be helpful. But how profoundly some of our simulations move people. And whether they were 3-hour ones or those 5-day live-in, 4-day live-in simulations I talked about for the Chinese government, they profoundly move people. And I'm really interested in that. And so, yeah, I guess those are three moments.
So to kind of summarize, the idea is to humble yourself to the craft. And when you start to see the effect of that craft, it will naturally kind of spurs on even greater action. Yeah. I love that. And, you certainly proved it over 30 years, to be able to have created the company and to work with the companies that you have and to have touched the that you've touched. I mean, just out of curiosity, how many people do you think over 33 years have been exposed to Experiential program?
It's on a slide deck we use. So, I mean, I know it's well over 250,000 people for sure.
That's
And
incredible.
yeah, it's a long way from the first client I had. His name was Paul Kendrick in Ottawa. He paid me $80. It took me 2 weeks to do the program. And I still appreciate that $80 because he was taking a risk that it would be worth it.
Right.
And I hope I gave $81 of value back to him. But now, we do have clients paying us millions of dollars over a number of years. I don't see it any different than when Paul gave us 80. He just needs more value for the money that they pay us. And I still think people are trusting us with their clients, with their money. I respect that. And I love the fact that you said, humble yourself to the craft, because I love the word craft. And I'm a writer on the side, as you know, and there's a wonderful writer that we all know that's written brilliant, brilliant books. And he says, the first draft is shit.
Right.
And so if he says the first draft is terrible, what right do all us normal people have to be arrogant about our first solution? We can be proud of it, but there's been so many people that have improved what I thought I was doing along the way that I've been lucky enough to learn from. And so, no man is an island. No entrepreneur is fully self-made. I don't believe that. We all need help. And sometimes you're lucky enough to get it. Sometimes you're not. You got to find a way through, but we all need help.
Well, Don, I just want to say a massive thank you. That was really, really insightful. You're a great speaker. And once again, Don Jones, founder and president of Experiential, thank you for your insights.
It's a pleasure, Robert, always.
Thanks so much for sticking to the end of our interview with Don Jones, founder of Experiential Inc. I love chatting with Don to learn more about the power of experiential learning and how much more effectively we learn when we immerse ourselves in carefully crafted learning environments. As always, I want to give a big shout out to my amazing sponsor, the Innovation Hub at Carleton University, dedicated to helping create leaders and new business ventures. Find out more at www.carleton.ca/Innovation Hub, and please remember to hit like and subscribe for more great stories of inspired entrepreneurs.